Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. It is a snowy day outside, so I'm so glad to be inside. Well, look, my name is Brian Smalls. I am one of the co-founders of Media Mentors. Media Mentors is a 501c3 organization, and we are super excited to work with young people. Our mission is very simple. It is to own your narrative. We want to work with young people on two fronts. We want to teach them content creation and film production. We also want to teach them how to take the skill sets that they are learning with us and turn that into a profitable business. And so today, we are honored to have some phenomenal guests. This session today is known as the next generation of creators, media creators. And so we're super excited, super thrilled to have an awesome panel here this morning. And today, our host today is going to be Rebecca Gaines. That is her government name, but most people know her by her name, her nickname, Beck G. Beck G is a phenomenal woman. She is a radio personality. She has her own publicist company. She is a all-around person, speaker, an MC, but I'm most proud to call her friend. And so I want to turn it over to Beck G. Beck, how you doing this morning?
I am well. You always give the most amazing introductions, but I know you and I were trading back and forth on who can introduce each other the best. So I thank you, kind sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. Trying to stay warm. I had to get on the road a little bit just to my office this morning so I could do this. But I'm inside. I'm ready to go, and I'm so excited to have you MC this event. Thank you for being with us today, and I'm so excited for the guest that you're about to introduce here in just a moment. I think today is going to be a phenomenal conversation.
I agree. Thank you for having me, and I'm really excited, especially since you introduced us as a fresh young panel. I'll take that.
Yes, absolutely. You guys are definitely young and fresh. We appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, I'm going to fall off here. The floor is yours.
Well, I thank you kindly. I'm really excited, just like Brian said, to have this conversation to help moderate, curate, and manage this conversation. But we want to answer some of the questions that we know this audience has. So it gives me great pleasure and honor to introduce first Miss Shari. Shari feels strong and secure as a writer, crafting stories from a filmmaking perspective. She says films are created through a process of re-examination and the belief that the whole is to be greater than the sum of its parts. So it doesn't surprise her that her professional training as a social worker motivates her to make more films. Let's meet Shari. I know you're excited with that introduction. Shari, good morning to you.
Hi, good morning. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for the introduction.
Absolutely. Well, let's just get right into it because I know a lot of people are very interested in your work. This is always a field that I know you're familiar with hearing. How'd you get into that? I want to do that too. So let's just talk about that. How did you get into this?
Yeah, I think it started with just kind of having an interest for telling stories. And my first job out of undergrad was as a newspaper reporter. And, I got comfortable telling other people's stories and figuring out how to think critically about things that I hear affect people in my community, and hearing about how people live their lives and reporting on that. And then from there, working and collaborating and teaching and sharing with other people through writing and storytelling it became very prominent in my life. And as I said, social worker, kind of being a social worker, it motivates me to want to tell more stories, because I work with people directly in trying to clarify their narrative so that they feel comfortable in who they are. That's basically what a social worker does, besides gathering the resources for people in need. It's a lot of mental health work, and that comes with a lot of conversation and learning about lived experiences. So my life has just always been kind of immersed in storytelling. And I think when I found filmmaking, when I found out that scripts need to be only between 1 and 120 pages long, straightforward and succinct and quick, and then you can collaborate to create this visual image, this visual story, that's when I really took off with my interest in storytelling and filmmaking. Thanks.
I really enjoy filmmaking, in particular. The arts, that heading has so many entries under it. You can be a storyteller, you can be a filmmaker. So many. You can be an artist. The list just goes on. But listening to you have an interest in storytelling, and relating that to your social work, is so flawless, and it seems like it just fits what you do. In your work in lit entertainment, what are some of the ways you help your students find their voices, and speak officially and creatively about their experiences and how it influences what they do?
Let me think about that. Repeat that question one more time for me.
Sure, let's just take the first half of it.
Yeah.
In your work with lit entertainment, what are some of the ways that you help your students find their voices and speak creatively and officially?
Yeah. I think it comes down to kind of narrowing down what story they want to tell. When I work with people on trying to find stories and tell stories or even write stories, people have lots of ideas, and these ideas can be so expansive. They just jump from one end of the genre to the next, one end of the spectrum to the next, and it's all just about like what we're interested in, right? What we saw, what kind of catches our attention, what we think would be cool. But sometimes it requires well, not even sometimes, it definitely requires narrowing your field down, getting down to like this one idea, this one concept, and developing that one concept thoroughly so that you're really telling something engaging that will engage an audience, that you're really presenting a story that has an appeal and that doesn't seem scattered, that seems focused, that seems intentional. I think a big part of storytelling, especially when I work with people in trying to tell the stories, is thinking about the audience. Think about that audience first, and cater your work to that audience. It doesn't really necessarily mean being a sellout, or it doesn't necessarily mean rebooting a lot of things that have already been done because you think that's what it might require. It just means that you're intentional about what you put forward, and that you're thinking about who's going to consume it and what they would want to get from that experience.
I really appreciate that, because especially with the title of this panel talking about the next generation of media experts and media specialists and media mentors and media creators, that's one of the top lessons is you got to be strategic. You have to be deliberate. You have to be intentional when you tell a story, because you want to capture your captive audience's attention. And so you got to take them one place at a time. I appreciate that. Shari, we got a couple of the people joining us on the panel today. So let's bring them in, because I'm excited about this entire conversation. So next, let me introduce Trish Thornton, a freelance director and content creator. The story of an influencer or business is most important to their brand, she says. So as a freelance director, she helps them tell the story of who they are, and to connect them with their audience. She's done this for 6 years, working with clients to develop ideas and create social media content to ensure the best and most accurate representation of their brand. Audience, please welcome Trish Thornton. Good morning. Trish, if you just come off mute because I want to hear you.
Oh, good morning.
All right, welcome. Welcome. We all got the early morning computer going on, right? How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for letting me
Yes,
be here this
right.
morning.
Welcome. Thank you. I'm well. I'm so excited to talk to you and Shari. And there's one more that's going to join us. Let's close out this entire panel because I'm ready to talk to you and I'm ready for the audience to hear from you. This is exciting. Dr. James Daniels III started out as one of his first lessons in coping with failure. He turned into his very first business venture. Dr. Daniels is the owner and creator behind Don't Judge Me Productions, LLC. Don't Judge Me Productions was established in 2014 and currently services clients all throughout the United States with a wide variety of photography and videography. Don't Judge Me Productions specializes in capturing life's most precious moments and bringing your creativity to life. Let's welcome Dr. Daniels. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How's everybody doing?
We're doing well, doing well.
That's good.
Thank you all for being here. Shari and I almost got carried away. We didn't forget that you all were there, but this conversation is so exciting. You know, I can get lost in a question or two. So welcome. Thanks for joining us. I'd like to let the audience know you all have been there all along. We just brought you on stage, so you're not late.
Okay.
Trish, let me bounce this conversation over to you.
Okay.
But all three of you do, you operate in such a very similar vein. So it's very interesting to see how, what makes what each of you do different. So as a content creator, and as the host of the digital series, Trish Plugged In, our Black History, Portsmouth, Virginia. Oh my gosh. And a podcast host of Growing Up Church. Wow. You really do delve into deep historical figures, local artists, and experiences of faith and community that don't often reach the mainstream. Is this intentional?
You know, I just started having these ideas and I put them out there. And it wasn't until I started putting the ideas out there that I saw that a lot of my content intersects at this place of faith and being Black. And Black history. And so it's something that for the longest, I would have ideas and I just kind of sit on them. And then I just got into this place of like, I need to get the ideas out. And so as the ideas came out, I looked at what I had produced and what I put out there. And I was like, I'm saying something with all of these things. They're somewhat similar, but there's a connection. And those are the things, that content that I create, like that's just inside of me. Those are the conversations that I'm having on a regular basis. So it really is a product of what you are interested in, what moves you. And then just, once you start working towards putting that out there, seeing where it is. And it's just like, oh man, it's been sitting in me the whole time. I had no idea. So yeah, I guess that's kind of where it all comes from.
Wow, that's really incredible. I really enjoy content creation. And let me clarify my statement. I don't enjoy doing it. I like to see it. So we need, I count on the Trishes of the world to keep that fresh content. So listening to what you just described, as you said, just to paraphrase, it was in you the whole time. And so you put it out and in our genius, as we typically do, we turn that into a lucrative opportunity, a business. And so I'm interested, how did you begin to connect with clients who wanted what you had to offer?
Oh man, your community is a lot of times your biggest supporters. So growing up in church, that's where I started to build my clientele. And I wasn't even trying to build at the time. I got out of school and you grew up in Black church, you know how it is. Oh, so-and-so does photography. She got you. Okay, well, I was doing video mostly, but I could do some photography. So I just started to get a lot of referrals from people in my church. And then, from, getting my hair done, somebody, oh, you do video, they find out what you do. And so honestly, that's how my clientele began to build. And then as I began to create content online and people saw my skill and my ability, then I started getting messages like, oh, you do video, oh, you do podcasting, oh, you do all these things. I'm trying to do this. Can you help me out with this? And so I I feel like a reluctant like filmmaker such content creator, because it was just as I started doing it and talking about it, you know, then and people started to notice, that's kind of how my business began to grow.
Yeah, I saw Shari and Dr. Daniels give the affirmative head nod. They understand. They're picking up what you're putting down. So they understand. They understand. Thank you for that, Dr. Daniels. Let me come over and talk to you. Media production, videography, photography. Oftentimes, it's a team endeavor. Has your doctorate in organizational leadership benefit you on set? As a videographer, photographer, and in media production?
Actually, yes. I didn't think that pursuing the doctorate would actually help in the business, but it actually helps on the side of business,
Wow.
which is something that, for lack of better words, I've wanted to improve for quite some time now. I'll say that. So it helps keep me organized. It helps me focus on things outside of content creating, of course. But like I said, it keeps me straight. So that helps.
Oh, that's really good. Well, Dr. Days, I did want to ask you, and I'm think it's so important to create these conversations, because people like us, and I'm a professional MC, and people always ask me, how do you get into that? Like Trish just mentioned, you know, you hear people. I grew up in church, so let me acknowledge that I understand exactly the example you gave. You know, Shari, as a filmmaker, wow, I'm pretty sure every day they ask you, do you know so and so, and have you worked with so and so? And Dr. Daniels, you know, I know a day probably doesn't go by where people don't say, oh, you need your pictures taken, or you need some great video. Go call Dr. Daniels. And they don't understand that you have to be inspired. You have to be connected to the project. You have to see what your clients see, in order to be connected. It's not just a job or a gig, you know, as is the language in our world. Tell me a little bit about You Think You Know a Person. You and your wife have a video series entitled You Think You Know a Person. How exciting and interesting. How important is it to have the right partner, right? That was a great segue to this question. Right partner when bringing a project to life. Amen.
Amen. I like that. That was pretty good. Well done.
Thank you, sir.
So the funny part was, I've been doing photography and videography for other people for years, and I started to get burned out. So I had ideas, like Trish said, that were just inside of me that I wanted to get out. I wanted to create for myself. So what I did was, the beautiful thing about the pandemic was it sat us all down and allowed us to either create or at least just get some rest that we needed. And I needed both. So the good thing about it was, my family is, I think I have a family of entertainers anyway. So everybody in here can play any role from comedy to drama, especially my wife and children. I'll just say that it's because that's everybody. But me and my wife were actually having a conversation one day, and we realized that there's a lot of things that we still do not know about each other in our now going on our 13th year of marriage. And a lot of it is just us picking at being funny and things like that. But it turned into an entire series that people have actually gravitated towards, which has been pretty nice and surprising. I wasn't expecting that. A person walked up to us at our homecoming for college and told us that we are, what's the word? We're showing how to communicate in a marriage, issues or things that you may have that would be difficult to talk about. So it's actually kind of funny because our first episode was about the fact that I didn't know my wife poured milk in the bowl before she poured cereal. So I thought that was exactly the same reaction that you all gave is what I had. So those are literally the topics that we have, and we go through them. A lot of them are hilarious and they're funny, but some of them are, I guess I won't say serious, but some of them are things that you could see an argument coming out of. But we're friends before we are married partners. So it's just a good time. Actually, season 3 actually comes out next month. So we're gearing up for the next
Well,
season.
count me in as a new viewer because that's so exciting. And I think not only the beauty, but the importance of what each of you do is telling these really important stories that, we laugh hardest at the comedians where we can identify what they're talking about, right? So we're most attracted to watching this visual content that each of you create when it makes sense where we live. So I'll ask this question of each of you. Shari, I'm going to come to you and ask, how important is a content creator and a videographer and photographer in your filmmaking life?
Yeah, I would say that that's very important. When making a film, you need that visual, and that visual comes from the person standing behind the camera. And as I guess I can call myself a filmmaker because I've written, directed, and produced a film. But I do not stand behind the camera. So my directing comes from in front of the camera, whereas there is a separate cinematographer that I went and found to help me with this, but they're the ones that bring it visually to life. And so unlike how Dr. James said that he utilizes the family around him, he has a family of entertainers around him, I went out and sourced strangers. I went out on websites, backstage.com and Facebook, just putting up requests for people to come and help me make the film I wanted to make. It definitely started in 2020 during the pandemic, where I decided that there was a lot of time on my hands. I needed to reinvent myself. I just felt like that was where my life was headed at that point, that I needed to do something for me. And this is where I guess it was, I could either start another script, start writing just another script, or I could start to make one into a movie. And so I decided to just take that leap and turn a script I wrote into a movie, and found the people that I needed to be a part of it. And as Dr. James was mentioning too, about organizational skills. Wow. I've always thought myself to be a little OCD when it came to organizing and and planning. But that really comes into handy when you're trying to create content, especially when you're working with strangers. I would say maybe also when working with family, to just keep things on time, on track, make sure everyone is where they need to be. And that nobody's time is wasted, and that things can get done in the time frame that you set out to get it done in. So I was able to shoot a 10-page short film or short script into a short film in one day. That's the time we had. And we started at 8 a.m. in the morning. We ended at 8 p.m. And a group of strangers came together and we did it. And I'm very pleased, that I was able to get that done. But yes, a cinematographer is like the second best important thing when making a film, because who's going to capture the visual images?
Right. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to pull another question from what you said, but please let me pass this on to Trish. Trish, in the same regards, how important is a videographer and photographer and even a filmmaker as you create content? And the answers may be obvious, but I want to hear it from you.
Mm-hmm. It's very important, and it's very important for whoever those individuals are. James, you have your family. Shari, you kind of went out and grabbed people. I'm a one-woman show. I don't say that braggadociously. I say that because that is what I have. And I actually became a one-woman show because when I was in school, we're going there. When I was in school, when I was at the Art Institute, there were kind of people that kind of clicked together and they worked together. And so trying to get people to work with you on your projects was challenging. It was very challenging because they kind of were already committed to, other people. And sometimes you can just kind of tell they were comfortable there. They were like, they weren't trying to say no, but they were just like, yeah, I'm over here. Mm-hmm. So it forced me to be my own cinematographer, to be my own videographer, to be my own editor, my own writer, director, producer. And so in that, I was just kind of like, once again, very reluctant because I want to direct. But, having to do those jobs myself, I got to see the importance of those jobs and what it brings to the content, what it brings to the film. And just really helping me to see the vision. And so all of those points, the photographer, the videographer, those points are important. It's important because it's a teamwork. It's a team job. It's, really being able to, I was watching a movie last night and I was looking at the scene and I was just like, why is this person lit like that? Why did they choose this shot? Because each of these things enhance the look of the story. It's not just the dialogue and the characters, but it's also where you put the camera in the frame, how you lit it, and what emotion that's coming coming from the film as an audience member.
Wow.
My language.
Being in this profession, we don't just look at shows anymore or watch red carpet hosts. We're watching with our professional
No.
eye. You know, people around me sometimes, could you stop critiquing how this lady's interviewing? I can't help it. I can't help it. Oh, this is so interesting. So, Dr. Daniels, I'll bounce this over to you. How important is a filmmaker like Shari, a content creator like Trish? How important are they to what you issue out as a media creator, a videographer, photographer, producer?
It's very important, honestly, because there's stories from our community that need to be told. Just like Trish, I definitely am a one-man show. So any video that you see come out of us, I have directed, produced, filmed, edited, colored, everything, the scripts. And the best part about it is that and then I say I include my family, those are my actors. That's the first line of actors that, that I choose, So when I go to them, I see myself, I take one hat, okay, I'm directing now. Here's your lines. This is how you want to deliver it. No, you got to deliver it a little bit differently than that, but okay, let's just try it. Then I set the cameras, I set the lights. And it's like I have the whole idea in my mind of how I want it to go. And it feels like I'm the only one who can tell that because I'm doing all of these positions. But it's also helpful for when I do get a team around me. Now I know exactly how I want things to be done for my particular project. And I have no problem taking a back seat to someone else's project because I've done that. That's how I got to film my first feature film, which was great. But it's important for me because the family life that I have now that I've been blessed to be able to create for my wife and my children is not what I had. So I love being able to tell that story to show that one, it's functional, two, it works, three, we're not all, I guess, criminals, bad people, so on and so forth. So I love sharing that narrative because it's not a popular narrative that's currently shared. So you need the videographer, the photographer to capture those images, to capture those moments, because that lives in infamy. It is forever out there. And it's a great thing to see compared to the normal narrative, which is something I pretty much strive to change every day.
You know, what I really enjoyed, thank you so much for those answers. What I really pulled from what you all commented is that each of you have a same set of access to resources, but you use them differently. Shari, you went and tapped on some strangers. Trish, one woman show. Dr. Daniels, you get to use your family. How exciting is that? I have a question in the audience from the Monty Ross, and he says, this is a great conversation. Where can we see your work? So can I start at you, Dr. Daniels, Trish, and then Shari?
Sure. So I post a lot of my work on Instagram and YouTube. Trying to make sure I get better at YouTube. My series that came out of the pandemic is called The Creatives. So The Creatives is spelled with a K for a couple of different reasons. One, to be different, and two, because I'm a Kappa. So
Okay.
had to it just made sense. But no, they're all on YouTube and they have playlists for them. I did create those. So there's a series, You Think You Know a Person, which is 26 episodes deep. It's actually pretty entertaining that it's that many already.
Wow.
There's also Life With versus Without Kids. That is that's where my kids get to shine. Let's just say that. And then there's also Confessions of a Grown Child. There's many series that came out of it that are under the umbrella of the creatives, but it is on my YouTube channel, Don't Judge Me Productions, and then also on Instagram at Don't Judge Me Productions.
Wonderful. Shari, Trish?
Am I next? Shari, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so there's the one film that I made. It is called Let the Damn World Talk, and it's on YouTube. And I think if you just type it in, Let the Damn World Talk, you will find it there. And that's me. I can't say that I'm using YouTube and Instagram as a place to really advertise storytelling work in the traditional sense. But that's where I've put at least that YouTube video. I mean, that short film is on YouTube. Yeah.
As for me, like James, a lot of my content is I try to share it on all of my platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and then I also use Vimeo. So on Vimeo, it'll be like my professional clientele project. So I've shot some weddings, and I did some fashion shows back when I was in the Art Institute. But Trish Plugged In and Our Black History, Portsmouth, Virginia, that is on YouTube. And I have two kind of different segments for Trish Plugged In. So I have my Trish Plugged In series where I'm highlighting creatives and artists, but then I started another segment under Trish Plugged In called Creatives About the Movement. And that's where I highlighted creatives and artists that were using their platforms during the 2020, I don't want to call it the racial reckoning, but
The revolution.
The revolution. Yes, that was televised.
It was televised. Gil Scott Heron.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, I have a segment of creatives about the movement that's on my YouTube channel, but I also turned that into a podcast where I was highlighting different creatives that were using their platforms, that were making music, that were, out on the streets, doing photography. So I'm still in the process of doing that. So that's both on Instagram, that's both on YouTube, and if you just wherever you get your podcast, you can find that. And then Growing Up Church is wherever you can find your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all of those platforms.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's really, really incredible. I like how you all work together. Y'all make me think you're a team. I don't know. I'm kind of
maybe
suspect.
one day.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying what I see. Okay.
I travel.
Same.
Yes.
I think one thing that keeps me creating is always seeing possible collaborations and groups that I enter into. So Ms. Beck, as you're saying, you see us as a team. I mean, I'm already seeing that, Trish and James, they do videography. They're very well seasoned in creating contents across many different platforms and genres and types, and so that already is ringing in my head that these are people that I can reach out to help with the next project that I want to create. And that's literally how I move through the world. That's how I use social media. Really, I start to follow people who create content as well, filmmaking and storytelling. And I decide that either I need to be on their team and help them create their next project so that I can learn from them, or I'm going to tap into that resource one day. I'm just going to cold DM them and say, would you like to help me do this? Like, is this of any interest to you? And can we Zoom? Can we chat about it and see what we can collaborate together and do? Because I just don't even understand how Trish and Dr. James, I'm so impressed how you guys have this much time on your hands to do
we don't.
this stuff.
We don't.
Ooh, can we talk about that? Can we talk about that?
Seriously, you make a great point. Absolutely, we can talk about that because you're speaking to the next generation of media creators, and they really do need to know. Shari, that was such a marvelous point. And Trish, I'm going to bounce it back to you so we can talk about this, and Dr. Daniels, but certainly how important it is to take advantage of your resources, to make time stand still, and collaboration. My goodness, I heard a saying earlier this year: competition is dead, collaboration is alive.
Amen.
So in these moments, media creators, listen as you're listening to this conversation. Collaboration is key. Trish, can I come to you? Dr. Daniels, then you. Let's talk about that. Making time stand still? Can we call it that? My goodness.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that up. And I was thinking about even Shari, what you were talking about. I in my head, I'm like a reluctant creative because I just wanted to be in the industry. I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I graduated. I just knew I liked film and TV. I just wanted to be in the room. And so as I started creating my content, I started creating it on the side. I was looking for work in my field. I couldn't find it, but I had to pay the bills. So, we're working at the library, we're working at whoever will hire me. And so I was just kind of doing this on the weekends outside of work. And it was challenging because both times I was working a full-time job. And so I was working the last job that I was at, I got furloughed from, actually. So, but in between being furloughed, before I got furloughed, my schedule was probably like 8 to 5. But the office, we had 2 different shifts. So some people would come in at 7 and get off at 4. Some people would come in at like 8 or 9 and get off at 6. So the office was open from 7 to 6. So me, like a crazy person, got the great idea so I could do my content on the side to come into work an hour early at 7, at 8 o'clock. My shift started at 8. So I would come in at 7 and use that hour to like do client projects or like work on my podcast. And then I would stay after work for an additional hour to continue working on that process. And it was just so stressful because I had gone through these periods of working full-time jobs, trying to work around my schedule. And I was just really getting burnt out. And when I came into 2020, I just remember being like, I'm ready to leave this job. Like, I just took this job so I could pay some bills. And I'm like, it's kind of, I'm not feeling it anymore. And so I started to actually prepare. And I wrote an article about this because a lot of times you're ready to leave your job, but are you prepared to leave? And so I started to prepare to leave because I was ready to go. I didn't know when I was leaving, and they furloughed me, and Viola Davis grabbed my bag, and I got on up there and I left. And in that time when I got furloughed, that's when I was able to really go hard and start putting that content out there. But before, I really was just like on the weekends and after work, that's when I started to kind of create and to build. And I wasn't, in my brain, I wasn't thinking about it as like I'm building something. I was just like, I have this idea, I want to do it. And so I'm doing it. And then, like I said, I look back and people are like, yeah, this is really good. And I'm like, oh, y'all watching. Okay, I got to keep doing this. All right. So this is kind of how it turned into, I turned into a content creator.
That's marvelous. Marvelous. Dr. Daniels.
So let's just say, so I'm actually, aside from doing videography and photography, I'm also doing my purpose in life as well as being an educator. So that is, let's just say that's your 8 to 4. Then, like, thank you. I get, I don't know. What I'm supposed to do. So I'm making sure I do that. Thank be to God. There you go. So from 8 to 4, I'm working with people's kids, and they are some of the most entertaining people of all time. But then from 4 until whenever I go to sleep, I am creating, I am editing. I have seen the sun come up many a days by accident because it's like, I just got to get this idea out, or this edit is looking really good. I'm going to be early on this project, so let me try to knock it out, and then you'll see the sun. So time is just, oh man, I've sacrificed sleep, family time. So it's definitely a commitment. And then the pandemic being able to sit us down was amazingly great. I had my first video for being I guess call myself a true content creator, was called Operation Ground Zero. So another photographer in my area, he basically says when he has no more projects to do for other people, he's at it's ground zero for him. So that means he has nothing to do. So I finished my last project and had this brilliant idea that since my kids were doing videography stuff too, because they're creative, so we're trying to do stuff for them. I had my wife come in there and pretty much just crash and kill my whole dream of being done working on other people's stuff and put me back into the game doing more. So that was like the first video. Then I said, oh, let's keep going. So it's the thing about creativity. It really doesn't sleep. So it's almost like if you dive into this, there's going to be times when you're not going to sleep as well, but it's worth it in the end. So it's like I'm sacrificing this time now because I know it's going to do well for someone. A lot of times when I create stuff, it's for someone else's benefit. And then also I'm thinking, well, I got that idea out, so I feel pretty good about it, All right. Nobody has to watch it. It's the fact that I got it done. And, I actually didn't put out most of my creative self content until later. I'd have like a few videos and I just watched them myself and be like, oh man, that was kind of funny. Oh, that was pretty good. So I've done stuff where I have a whole series that I was working on. The Revolution will be televised. So
Amen.
Especially after Floyd Mayweather, I did an entire video called The Black Man's Psyche. And that was the hardest thing I've ever had to create though, because having to keep revisiting those traumatic experiences, and people don't understand that as a Black male, that does weigh on us. That is, as people in general, it should weigh on you, but imagine being a target regardless of your economic status, your societal status. I mean, I'm an educator, 13 years dedicated to kids, and I'll still be seen as a threat in any moment. So created that, but it was the hardest thing to put out. But I did put it out, and I'm actually going to submit it to a film festival. But it was 3 minutes, but it just took me that you talk about time. It took me a long time to edit that because of just constantly revisiting those moments. But yeah, if you're going to create, you're going to give up some time. I guess that's the end off for me.
That's really good. I this conversation is so important, and I'm so encouraged that the next generation of media creators is watching, because we're giving them some inside scoop. It's supposed to stay in house, that we stay up from dusk to dawn. That's our little secret, right? And it's our little secret that when we are so connected and passionate about our work, that yes, we do sit back and say nobody has to watch that. We don't mean that. We want you to buy. We were just kidding. But inside, right? Amen, y'all.
Yes.
But you make such a great point, Dr. Daniels, and I want to put this question to each of you. Answer in the order that you see fit. But you mentioned being personally connected and having a responsibility to be personally connected to your projects. You just mentioned this marvelous project that I'll have you revisit before we close out the show, each of you, your most recent project, so we can pay attention and sign up to be in the audience. But doing projects about the racial revolution and doing projects about the Black man and telling the stories of mental health, and the list goes on and on, not just because it's popular content or it has the potential to go viral, but because this is an important right now. And typically conversations that are important right now will be important forever. So the responsibility of creating classic content, let's talk about that in film, in content, in videography, in photography, as you see fit. Please, let's talk about your personal responsibility and your personal connection to your work.
Ladies.
I think people really want to see themselves reflected in storylines that are out there. I think that's just a general, like, innate, intrinsic need when people engage with stories. And when I say see themselves reflected, it doesn't necessarily mean their outer appearance, whether it be or just that aspect of a person, of a self, whether it be that outer appearance, or it be an outer appearance. It could be something more internal, like talk about mental health, talk about what it's like to go through childbirth, talk about what it's like to be an anxious teen, talk about first love. So we want to see those stories, those real stories, those classic stories, kind of always reflected in things that we do, because it's kind of what draws us in as people. It draws us into the storyline. It draws us into the plot when we can see reflections of ourselves in some kind of way coming back at us. And so, I think that that's a necessity in storytelling, regardless if you're talking about animation or sci-fi or fantasy. You've got to come with the component of where are people seeing a reflection of themselves. And I think, that's like at the foundation, at the core of trying to create content, at least filmmaking content. Maybe even, I mean, I don't know if it can extend into the podcast. Yes, podcast content, all that type of content. I think at the core, people enjoy seeing a mirror turned inward a little bit. So I think I answered that question in the sense of it grounds me in how I kind of come up with, or when I take stories from other people and want to reinvent them for film. I'm looking for why am I connected to that story? Why am I interested in that story? Where is that connection coming from?
Yes. Gosh, that's marvelous, Trish.
Yeah, I think I was going to hit on kind of Shari's last point. I need to feel a personal connection to what I am creating. I know I've had a lot of people approach me about, I'm trying to get into making content, and a lot of times it's just so that they can be on. And that's fine. Some of it's just so I can make money, and that's fine. But I don't know. I don't create like that. So I'm not the person to help you if you're just trying to make money, if you're just trying to be on. Like, I am personally connected to the stories that I tell. So for me, it doesn't even feel like a responsibility because I have that personal connection already. I love being Black. I do. I like talking about it, and I like creating. I like telling those stories. And one of the things that I have seen is that when I am personally connected to telling this story, when I am personally invested in the story, what it yields. I did this. My first Our Black History Portsmouth video that I did was just me walking and being like, why was this neighborhood, it was always the bad neighborhoods, quote unquote, always the hood neighborhoods, always the housing projects, that get a bad name. But the name, I was like, who is Ida Barber? You know what I mean? Where did we pull this name from? And I just started doing my research, and I learned that Ida Barber was like one of the first African-American daycare providers in Portsmouth, Virginia, like in the early 1900s, when people were, Black people were working as maids and, on trains and things. And I was like, man, like, we all we know is Ida Barber is this housing project that got torn down,
Mm-hmm.
and I just felt like I wanted to put it out there. And so I put it out there, and I shot it on my cell phone, and I thought it was campy. And every day the views just kept going up on Facebook. And I was just like, oh my goodness. And I'm just not thinking much of it, but it just connected with people. I went into the store, I went to 7-Eleven, and this lady says, hey, ain't you that girl from that video? And I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. And so it's one of those things where when you are personally connected to telling those types of stories, they reverberate, they reach people where they are. You don't have to worry about how it's going to reach people, but just knowing, like, I feel like I want to tell this story, and telling that story and just watching what comes of it.
Yes. Gosh, that's wonderful. Dr. Daniels.
Oh, wow. So that's, that's two powerful statements back to back. I'm sitting here like, oh, what could I say?
Right.
No, but for me, I pretty much had a very rough upbringing. So to be where I am now, clearly God had his hand on me. So right. I am looking to tell more stories of triumph. I connect with everything that I put out, or I'm looking to help somebody else see themselves in that particular situation, especially because I have an amazing friends group that basically every so often reminds me in comedy ways of how far I've come from that upbringing. So it's amazing to see that growth. And then, of course, that's something that when I go to a school, I'll see a kid and I'll be like, oh man, I remember when there was no one at home too. So I got a story for that, and here's a story that you can resonate with. Here's a story that she can resonate with. I want to make sure that, for lack of better words, as a Black successful man who is doing things right, following God's steps and doing what he's told, I want to change the narrative. So I don't want to be, I don't want to necessarily ask for a seat at the table. I'm gonna go ahead and set my own table up, and then we're gonna go ahead and work towards changing this narrative. If it's done in a photo, I'll do it in a photo. If it's done in a video, I'll do it in a video. If it's done in a classroom, I'll do it in a classroom. But the goal is just to make sure that that narrative gets changed. I won't just accept it because that is what the main thing is put out. So I just want to change the narrative.
Wow. This conversation, I'm sitting here trying to figure out how we're supposed to squeeze this into an hour. I could sit here with you all until it turns into yesterday again. This conversation is important, it's interesting, and it's impactful. And I'm just so honored to hear from you. And I'm also thinking about, well, just like Shari and Trish and Dr. Daniels, how can we all work together? Because it's very important to me, just even answering my own question, to handpick my team and who I get to create with. That's so important because that really can impede your creativity, and it can tarnish what you put out if you don't work with people who see what you see. And I certainly want that to be a resounding message for the viewers who are the next generation of media creators, and those whose shoulders we stand on. We hope that we do them the right justice by telling the necessary stories, by telling the stories of people who don't have the ability to have a voice above a whisper. And so for those of you who facilitate those conversations and that storytelling and capturing the moment in still or in motion, that we do that together. And so this is such an honor to do. So let's keep talking. We have a few moments. I'm just lamenting that the time is near. That's all.
Yeah.
But yes. So Shari, I want to come to you and ask about what you're working on currently. How can we connect with your most recent labor of love, and what is it?
Yeah, so what I'm currently working on is another script. I'm going to try to attempt a feature film. And I'm from the Virgin Islands originally. I'm from St. Croix, and I want it to be shot there. So I love hearing Trish and Dr. James be so strong in their identities and knowing from the get-go of creating, they're going to go with what resonates with them personally. But my journey always began kind of outside of me. And now I have an opportunity to kind of think, and by opportunity, I just mean in the sense of knowing what the story is going to be a little bit more clearly. So it's coming to me more clearly what I can kind of fashion a story for being shot in the Virgin Islands to be. And so now I'm ready to jump on that bandwagon and go that direction with utilizing the beauty of that island. It's not a very well, it's not a popular destination in the Caribbean, popular enough, but really not in comparison to the other Caribbean islands. And so just kind of putting that island on the map too is the objective a little bit, showcasing some of that beauty, but also some of that lifestyle. And so that's something that I'm working on that I'm going to need a huge team to perform, because I do not plan to do all of the pieces of it. It's just not the way I can create. I'm good at the writing and the directing part, and then the producing. And so that's what's on my mind, and that's what I will need a team for. And what that will look like, I don't know, but I think I can and will get this done.
We're excited for you. I think I speak on behalf of the entire team, even backstage. And I think I heard you say, "Hey, Beck, come with me to Virgin Islands." Correct me if I'm wrong. Not sure, but I think I heard you say that. And yeah,
that's exactly what I said. As well as Dr. James and Trish, come.
Yes, count me in. Count me in. This is so marvelous. Trish, can I come to you with the same question? What are you working on now? How can we connect to your projects?
Yeah, so right now I'm still in development with Growing Up Church, working on getting out an episode like at least once a month because I'm juggling so many projects. And as we're going into February, I am working on something for our Black History Portsmouth, kind of like working on how to put that story together. I'm still have some interviews that I'm editing for Creatives About the Movement, because I don't want that to, and I called it Creatives About the Movement because it seemed like it was a moment, and people were like, it's not a moment, it's a movement. And so movements are continuous. And so I want to continue to have this conversation. How are creatives using their platforms to push this movement along about social justice, the injustices and the inequalities? And so, like, yes, all three projects that I have been working on, Trish plugged in, Growing Up Church, Our Black History, we're still working on those. I do have I have a couple of short films that I've writing. One will be in development for the first half of this year. So that'll definitely be coming to social media soon. So yeah, I'm excited about that.
I'm excited. Just to make sure, I want to just repeat and recap because the audience is listening. Did you say, "Hey Beck, since you're Black, come tell a little part of your story"? Did you say that?
Absolutely.
Okay, because I thought that's what I heard you say. I was just checking in. I'm really excited about it. Thank you so much. And Dr. Daniels, last and certainly not least, to tell us about what you're working on.
Okay, so we're gearing up for, I guess you can call it season 3 of The Creatives. So You Think You Know a Person is already in post-production. We're also going to be filming some more content for The Creatives. I have some brand new ideas that I'd like to get out. Also looking to I did a major National Poetry Month video project last year that was pretty successful. So I'm looking to probably do that again. That's going to come up in April, but I love filming things well in advance. So that way, when I get the time, I can go ahead and knock them out so I don't have to stay up until the next day. And then also I desire to do another feature film. I desire to do a short film, something. I just really loved that idea. I love doing documentaries. I want to do another one of those as well. Am I going to do it in 2022? I have no idea. But I do want to do a short film at least this year. So whether that be jumping on to assist someone else or my own, I definitely want to do it. So that's pretty much what's coming up immediately for us.
That's really marvelous. And as I did with Shari and Trish, just to make sure I heard you correctly, if you said, Beck, if you wanted to have a walk-on role, you're welcome. Is that what I heard you say?
I do believe that's what I said, especially if you do poetry. I mean, if you...
Yeah. Okay, I just was making sure because I mean it sounds so amazing. To Shari, to you, Trish, to you, Dr. Daniels, I honor your work. Thank you for thinking that not robbery of your time. Trish, you like that? That's a good church saying, right? Yes. I just am so encouraged by what you did share, and we only scrape the surface. Watching audience, listening audience, we only scrape the surface. To know more, to find out more, you got to stay connected. You have to stay connected to these marvelous media creators, and I think we formed an alliance here, and let's look forward to collaborating with one another in the very soon and near future. And in a message for you all from the Monty Ross, he says, and I quote, "Stay motivated." Thank you for your time. Stay here. I'll be back with you after the show, and I'm gonna push this over to Brian, and we're gonna close out with our benediction. Wow, thank you so much. This was really marvelous. Brian.
Wow. What amazing conversation. Woo! Oh my gosh. This was great. I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to just listen into the next generation of creatives and creators. Just powerful just to listen to their stories. How they can do things so differently in many respects, but with the same mission and the same motivation. And again, I think, again, Media Mentors, our mission is to own your narrative. And you can tell just based on the conversation that they own their narratives and everything that they do. So thank you, Beck G, for hosting today. We appreciate you so much.
The thanks goes to you for curating such an expert panel. That are so content rich, no pun intended, but my goodness.
Yeah, well, you know what? I can't take complete credit. We have an incredible team that we work with here at Media Mentors, from our co-founders to, our board and obviously our supporters, you being one of them. So thank you so much for your contribution to today's conversation. If anyone is interested in getting some additional information about Media Mentors, please go to our website. We've got a lot of stuff that we're doing, content that we're putting out. Obviously, we're active on social media, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. So we're just super thrilled to be able to work with young people and to allow them to tell their stories. So Beck, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Everybody else for being here. And we look forward to having our next conversation. So take care. Stay safe with the weather outside. And we will see you guys next time around.